Welcome back, rankers. Now, look, I did talk about Google Wave last week, the new social media tool from Google. I did get an invite. Thank you very much to Benjamin Ball, because after I whinged and complained in the show, Benjamin, who's a viewer, sent it in, which was fantastic. I had a little bit of a play, but I haven't really given it a good road test yet. And we want to use an internal project and throw it into Google Wave and see what we can get out of it. In case you don't know, Google Wave is about the live web, and it's about sharing and communicating ideas in a live environment. A bit hard to explain without a screenshot, so once I have a project in Google Wave that we're using it, and we're happy the way that we're using it, then we'll bring you a screen share of it. This morning, Google has announced at its analytics blogspot.com that there's been some changes to Google Analytics. Now, I won't bore you with the details because, quite frankly, it is quite boring unless you're into analytics, which a lot of you are, I know, so I would suggest you go and read that. Some minor changes. I still don't see the changes I'd really like to see in Google Analytics, which is a Google Calendar overlay of my traffic data. A bit like what we see in Google Insights for search, so when you see news items flagged across the graph, I'd like to see that in Google Analytics. And Matt Cutts, if you're watching, that'd be great. So then I could upload changes that I've made on a certain day to my website and into my, say, Google Calendar, and then I could see those changes overlaid on the traffic graph and how those changes affected traffic, basically. The other thing about Google Analytics, and that a lot of people don't know, and whilst Google Analytics is a fantastic tool, and thank you Google for making it free for everyone to use, the one thing people don't know is that it's not going to tell you about the bots. Now that's really important, because what happened to us this week is that all of a sudden content that we were publishing wasn't getting indexed. It wasn't appearing in the Google search. And to give you an idea, whenever I publish something on the blog, I usually see it within the Google index within 24 hours, just because Google keeps coming back to the site. So what happened was I went looking for the piece of content that I'd written for Blog Action Day in the Google index, and it wasn't there. And I thought, well, that's a tad odd. So what I did is we went and had a look at our own stats package, because we use, and I know many of you out there do as well, we use Joomla, very fond of Joomla as a content management system. And what we found is that the bots weren't coming, or Google bot was coming, but it wasn't coming very much. And the reason why it's important to know the bots and where they, what they access and what they look at is because if you write a piece of content, you put it up on your website, then you go and check Google and it's not there, then all you rely on is perhaps what everybody else relies on, which is the cache date, and the cache date is this thing here. You click on cached, and then it gives you a 16th of October. This page was or this is a snapshot of the page as it appeared on the 16th of October. But the cache date and the Googlebot visit date don't necessarily coincide at all. Those two dates can be, in my experience, up to 2 weeks apart. So it pays to have your own stats package on your own site, and we use this one that's called Joomla Stats that's a plugin for Joomla. And the reason that we put it in here is that it tells us that today, this morning, Google visited our site at 7:06 AM and looked at 36 pages. And then I can go and look at those pages and find out exactly what items the Google bot actually looked at. And I'm just looking at here saying Google Waves at Twitter. So that was last week's show. So unless you know that, then you're sort of living in a vacuum a little bit when it comes to knowing whether Google's looked at your site or not, because you're not going to rank until Google looks at your site. Now, the bot stopped coming all of a sudden last week, and what happened was on the, let's go to the 16th, the Google bot usually comes to our site at least 20 times a day. And what we found was on the 16th, let's have a look here. On the 16th, it only came 3 times. Yet the day before, and this is on average, the day before we can see right here, it came 18 times. So to go from 18 to 3, you could say, well, 16th, it was a Friday, maybe Google's having some time off, having a few drinks, Poets' Day. If you don't know what Poets' Day is, our American viewers, I suggest you Google it. So that sort of set alarm bells off. So then I went straight into Google Webmaster Tools, and as I said before, you've got to use Google Webmaster Tools. I went into Google Webmaster Tools and we had a look here, and at this particular sitemap, which is our main sitemap, we have a couple of sitemaps, one for the video content for YouTube and Google Video and those sorts of things, and the other one is, of course, for our normal pages. And what I found is that this here had a massive error right here, and it said, sorry, your robots.txt is unreachable, and therefore we can't even have a look at your sitemap. And in case you don't know, Google Webmaster Tools is about putting your sitemaps up there so Google can go and find all your content. As you can see here, we've got 610 pages currently in our sitemap, and at the moment Google's indexed about 400 of those. But on the weekend, this said, sorry, busted. We can't find it. So of course, then you go through all the normal checks that you would go through. You go and make sure that you can actually surf to the robots.txt file. You go and do things like URL header checkers, and if you haven't done URL header checkers on your site, I suggest you do, because quite often there can be things happening with your site that you don't know about, simply because the server's been set up incorrectly or your hosting company is doing something different. So the point that we got to was, well, we think our hosting company is blocking the Googlebot. So I rang the hosting company up and I said, are you guys blocking the Googlebot? And they said, no way, that'd be stupid. I said, yes, it would.